Stop reading. Eleanor's voice died instantly. Silence crashed into the library. The blind Duke rose from his chair, slowly, deliberately, terrifyingly calm. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the book. Had she read the wrong passage, said something offensive? His pale, sightless eyes turned toward her, locked onto her breathing, her heartbeat, her fear. Then he spoke, low, rough, dangerously quiet. "Come here." Her pulse exploded. "Your Grace." His jaw tightened. "I said, come here." She obeyed. One step. 2, 3. Now she stood close enough to hear his breathing, close enough to feel his presence. Then his hand rose, slowly, not touching, hovering near her face, searching, listening, finding. His fingers stopped just above her lips, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "Why," he asked, "do I wait for midnight just to hear your voice?" 3 weeks earlier.
The old grandfather clock struck midnight. 1, 2, 3. Each heavy chime rolled through Ashcroft Manor like a warning. Eleanor Vale kept her head lowered as she carried fresh linen down the west corridor, her soft shoes making almost no sound against the polished wooden floor. She had been at Ashcroft Manor for only 6 days. 6 days, and already she understood why servants whispered when they spoke of the Duke. No one raised their voice in the West Wing. No one laughed there. Even the fire seemed to burn more quietly. The servants called it his side of the house, as though the walls themselves belonged to him, as though silence answered to his command. Earlier that evening, while polishing silver in the kitchen, Eleanor heard 2 maids whispering. "She's the 17th. 17th what? Bride." The younger maid shivered. "He sent her away before tea." Eleanor glanced up. 17 women? The older maid nodded grimly. Daughters of earls, viscounts, barons, all rejected. Why? The maid leaned closer. "Because the Duke refuses everyone." "Surely not without reason." "Oh, there's reason." A pause. Then the whisper. "He cannot see." Eleanor stilled. Blind. That explained some things. The cane, the measured footsteps, the way he turned his head slightly when people spoke. But blindness alone did not explain the fear. The older maid continued. 8 years ago, carriage accident. Another servant crossed herself. They say he hasn't been the same since. They say he can hear lies. Eleanor nearly smiled. That sounds dramatic. The older maid did not smile back. No, her voice dropped. It sounds ridiculous until he speaks to you. Silence followed. Then the cook muttered from across the kitchen, "The Duke misses nothing." That line stayed with Eleanor even now. As she reached the end of the corridor, she paused. The linen room was to her left, but something else pulled at her. A thin line of candlelight from beneath a half-open door. She frowned. The West Library? At this hour? Strange. No servant remained awake this late unless ordered, and no one entered the Duke's preferred rooms without permission. Eleanor should walk away, she knew that, yet something held her there. Curiosity had always been her greatest weakness, and books had always undone her. She edged closer. The door stood slightly ajar.
Inside, moonlight spilled across towering bookshelves, leather-bound volumes stretched floor to ceiling, ladders, maps, globes, shelves older than her father. Her breath caught. It was beautiful. She had never seen so many books in one room, not even in the vicar's collection back home. She glanced behind her. No one. Just silence. Just darkness. Just temptation. She stepped inside, slowly, carefully. The scent hit her immediately. Leather, dust, wax, paper. It felt sacred. The candle on the reading desk burned low. Perhaps someone had forgotten it. Eleanor moved through the room in awe, fingertips hovering near spines, but never touching. Poetry, history, philosophy, classics, Greek, Latin. Her heart tightened. Her mother would have loved this room. Before her mother took her illness, her mother taught Eleanor to read by candlelight. Not just read, love words, respect them, live inside them. Even after her mother's death, reading became refuge. In books, people survived impossible things. Sometimes that mattered. Eleanor's gaze fell on a familiar spine. Milton. Her pulse warmed. She carefully slid the book free, opened it. The page fell naturally to a marked section. Interesting. Someone had read this recently. She hesitated, then sat in the leather chair by the candle. Just for a minute, just one page. That was all. Her voice emerged in a whisper, soft, almost fragile. She began to read. Though fallen on evil days. The library remained still. She continued, on evil days though fallen, and evil tongues. Her voice steadied. The words wrapped around her, warm, familiar. The world softened. The manor disappeared. The Duke disappeared. Servant duties disappeared. Only language remained. Only rhythm. Only memory. She turned the page, kept reading, and for the first time in days, Eleanor forgot to be careful. She forgot where she was. She forgot whose house this was. She forgot danger. Then a voice emerged from the darkness, low, masculine, cold enough to stop her heart. Who is reading? The book slipped from her hands. It hit the floor with a sharp thud. Eleanor shot to her feet. Blood drained from her face. The voice had come from the far side of the library, near the fireplace, hidden in shadow. She hadn't seen anyone. Dear God, someone had been there the entire time. A figure shifted in darkness, tall, broad-shouldered, seated in a high-backed chair facing the dead fireplace. A black cane rested near one gloved hand. The Duke of Ashcroft, Sebastian Ashcroft. Eleanor could not breathe. He rose slowly, every movement precise, controlled, not a wasted motion. Moonlight touched part of his face, strong jaw, dark hair, aristocratic features carved in shadow, and his eyes, beautiful, pale gray, unfocused, sightless, but somehow more intimidating because of it. He turned his face toward her, not at her, toward her, listening, mapping. His voice came again, quiet, deadly calm. I asked a question. Eleanor's throat tightened. I'm sorry, Your Grace. Her voice trembled. I did not realize anyone was here. Silence. He took one step, then another. The cane tapped once, not because he needed guidance, because he chose precision. He stopped, close enough that Eleanor could hear his breathing. You're the new maid. Not a question, a statement. Yes, Your Grace. Eleanor Vale. Her eyes widened. He knew her name. Of course he did. He knew everything. She swallowed. Yes. Another silence, heavy, unbearable. Then, unexpectedly, he asked, "What were you reading?" She blinked. The question caught her off guard. "Milton." Pause. "Which passage?" She answered automatically. "Paradise Lost, Book 7. Silence again. Then the Duke tilted his head slightly, listening, as if replaying her voice, as if studying it. When he finally spoke, his tone had changed. Not warmer, just different, lower, more focused. "Pick up the book." Eleanor stared. "What?" She bent quickly, retrieving the fallen volume. Her hands shook. The Duke's next words made no sense, none at all. "Continue." She frowned. "Your Grace?" His expression remained unreadable. "Read." She thought she misheard. "I beg your pardon?" His jaw tightened slightly, the first hint of impatience. "I dislike repeating myself." A beat. "Continue where you stopped." Eleanor's pulse pounded. Surely this was absurd. He wanted her to read, now, at midnight, to him. She stood frozen. The Duke's voice dropped. Soft, dangerously soft. "Do I make you nervous, Miss Vale?" Yes, terribly, but she dared not say that. "No, Your Grace." A faint shift touched his mouth. Not quite a smile, almost worse. "You're lying." Her breath caught. The servants were right. He heard everything. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Read anyway." Eleanor stared at the blind Duke, at the feared man no bride would marry, at the cold aristocrat everyone whispered about, and for reasons she could not explain, she opened the book and began to read.
The first minute was agony. Eleanor could hear every small sound, the turning of paper, the candle crackling, her own breathing. The Duke said nothing. He stood near the fireplace, one gloved hand resting atop the head of his cane, his sightless eyes fixed somewhere beyond her shoulder, listening, only listening. Eleanor forced herself to continue. Her voice was soft at first, careful, guarded, every syllable measured. She expected interruption, correction, dismissal. Instead, nothing. The Duke remained utterly still. She turned another page, kept reading. Slowly, something strange began to happen. The fear eased, not completely, but enough. The words pulled her in again. Milton's rhythm returned. Language became anchor. She forgot the Duke's terrifying reputation, forgot the servants' whispers, forgot the impossible absurdity of reading poetry to a Duke at midnight. For several minutes there was only her voice. Then, stop. Eleanor froze mid-sentence. Her pulse jumped. Had she done something wrong? She lowered the book. "Your Grace." Silence. The Duke's head tilted slightly, that unnerving listening posture again. Then he asked, "Why do you read like that?" Eleanor blinked. "Like what?" "You don't perform." She frowned. He continued, "Most people read to impress." A beat. "They shape words to sound intelligent." Another. "They force emotion." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You don't." She stared. No one had ever described her reading, certainly not like this. "I don't know what to say." "Answer." She hesitated, then spoke honestly. "My mother hated dramatic reading." The Duke said nothing, so she continued. "She said words already carry weight." A small swallow.
They don't need vanity added to them. Silence. Long silence. Then, your mother was intelligent. The statement came so simply it startled her. Warmth flickered unexpectedly in her chest. Yes. A pause. She was. The Duke shifted slightly. Is she alive? The question landed like cold rain. Eleanor looked down. No. Silence. Then, how old were you? 9. Again silence, but this one felt different, less interrogative, more still, as though something inside him had quieted. When he spoke again, his voice had lowered. Continue. She resumed, this time easier, much easier. And as the minutes passed, Eleanor noticed something unsettling. The Duke's face changed while listening, subtly. His expression remained restrained, but the rigid tension in his jaw eased, his shoulders lowered, the cold aristocratic armor softened, only slightly, but enough to notice, enough to wonder. This man, the feared blind Duke, was starving for something, not conversation, not company, something rarer, presence, attention without agenda, truth without performance. When she reached the end of the chapter, the Duke finally spoke. That is enough. Eleanor closed the book. Her throat felt dry. The clock struck 1. She had been there an hour, an entire hour, reading to him. This was madness. She clutched the book tighter. May I go, Your Grace? Silence. Then, no. Her eyes widened. No. The Duke turned toward the shelves. What else have you read? She blinked. This was no dismissal. This was an interview. Poetry, novels, scripture, history. Classics? Yes. Greek? No. French? A little. Silence. Then, come tomorrow. Her heart skipped. Tomorrow? At midnight. He said it as though it were obvious, as though this arrangement had always existed. Eleanor stared. Surely not so. You wish for me to read again? His brow faintly tightened. I dislike repetition, Miss Vale. That almost sounded dry humor. Almost. She swallowed. Yes, Your Grace. Bring something better than Milton. She nearly forgot herself. Better? The word slipped out before she could stop it. The Duke slowly turned toward her. Dangerous. What? Eleanor's eyes widened. She had just challenged a duke at 1 in the morning. Dear God, I only meant... His expression remained unreadable. Then something impossible happened. The corner of his mouth shifted, barely. A ghost of amusement. You disagree. Not a question, another statement. Eleanor froze. Silence stretched. Then, against every instinct, she answered truthfully. Yes. The word came out small, very small, but real. The Duke goes still, then took one slow step toward her, then another. The air changed. Her pulse thundered. He stopped directly before her, too close, far too close. His sightless grey eyes remained unfocused, yet Eleanor felt completely seen, exposed, examined. He spoke softly. Your pulse betrays you. Her throat tightened. Could he hear that? Impossible. And yet, with him, nothing felt impossible. His next words sent a chill down her spine. You're afraid of me. Not accusation, observation, truth. Eleanor whispered, yes. Silence. Then the Duke lowered his hand. For the first time that night, something raw entered his voice, barely audible. Good. She frowned. Good. Why good? Before she could ask, his expression sealed shut again. Cold Duke, unreadable, gone. Tomorrow at midnight. A command, final, dismissal. Eleanor curtsied quickly. Yes, Your Grace. She turned, moved toward the door, hand trembling on the handle. Then his voice stopped her, one final time, low, controlled, quietly devastating. Miss Vale. She turned. Yes. The Duke stood in shadow again, tall, still, dangerous, his blind eyes fixed toward her voice. Then he said, Your voice. A pause, long enough to stop her heart, makes this house sound less empty. Eleanor forgot how to breathe. The words landed with startling force. Not flirtation, not kindness, something far more dangerous. Truth, raw, unguarded truth. The Duke had revealed a fracture, a glimpse into the loneliness beneath the ice. Then the moment vanished, his voice returned to command. Leave. And she did. But sleep never came that night, because one thought kept repeating in Eleanor's mind. The blind Duke had refused 17 brides, yet after 1 hour he had asked her to return at midnight. By the third night, the entire household knew something had changed. No one said it directly, but servants noticed everything. The Duke was no longer taking supper alone in complete silence. He no longer dismissed every conversation with cold efficiency. He no longer spent entire days locked inside his study. Something had shifted, and somehow the shift had begun with the new maid. Eleanor felt the stares. She felt them in the kitchen, in the laundry room, in the corridors. The whispers stopped whenever she entered. That alone told her enough. She had become a subject of discussion, and she hated it. At 11:58, Eleanor stood outside the library doors, book pressed tightly to her chest. Tonight she had brought Austen. She stared at the brass handle. Her pulse raced. Why was she nervous? This was only reading, only books, only words. But that wasn't true anymore, because the Duke no longer felt like a distant figure. He felt dangerous in a different way now, not because he was cruel, because he listened too closely, too deeply. He noticed things people missed, things people ignored, things Eleanor herself tried not to acknowledge. She inhaled, opened the door. The Duke was already there, seated near the fire, hands folded, waiting, as if he had known the exact second she would arrive. You're late. Eleanor blinked. She looked toward the clock. It had just struck midnight. I am precisely on time. Silence. Then 3 seconds late. She stared. Was he serious? The faintest curve touched his mouth, not a smile, but close enough. Eleanor almost laughed, almost. Instead, she moved to the chair. I brought Austen. The Duke tilted his head. Which one? Pride and Prejudice. A beat. Acceptable. She raised a brow before catching herself. Acceptable? This man reviewed books like military inspections. She sat, opened the novel, began reading. The familiar rhythm settled quickly now. The strange ritual had become natural. That realization unsettled her. Every midnight she read. Every midnight he listened. Sometimes he interrupted. Sometimes he asked questions. Sometimes he sat in complete silence. But always he waited for her voice. Tonight, after nearly 40 minutes, he interrupted. Stop. Eleanor lowered the book. What? What do you think of Darcy? She blinked. That was not the question she expected. "You've read this?" "No." She frowned. "Then how do you know Darcy?" "I remember what Wilcox read." Of course, the butler had read to him before. She thought carefully. "He's proud." "Yes." "But not cruel." The Duke remained still. She continued. "He appears cold because he feels too much and trusts too little." Silence. Then, "You sympathize with him." Not a question. She looked at the page. "Yes." "Why?" She hesitated, because the answer felt dangerous, too honest, too pointed. Still, she answered. "Because people often mistake restraint for arrogance." The Duke did not move. She continued softly. "They assume silence means indifference." A pause, when sometimes the opposite. The room went still. Fire crackled. Nothing else. Then his voice came, lower than before. "Go on." Eleanor swallowed. She shouldn't. She really shouldn't. But something about these midnight conversations dissolved caution. Sometimes silence means feeling too much. A beat. "So you say nothing." Another. "Because saying anything at all feels exposing." Silence. Heavy silence. Then the Duke spoke, quietly. "Are you describing Darcy?" Her pulse jumped. "No." A pause. "Your Grace." That almost sounded like a challenge. The Duke leaned back slowly. "And yet," his voice dropped, "you sound certain." Eleanor looked down, because she was certain. Not about Darcy, about him, about Sebastian Ashcroft. The world thought him cold, cruel, impossible, but Eleanor had spent hours listening to the silence around his words. The man said little, but his silences screamed loneliness, control, pain, and something else, something restless, hungry, watching. The Duke suddenly spoke. "Come here." Her head snapped up. "What?" His expression was unreadable. "Come here." Her throat tightened. "Why?" She stood slowly. Every step toward him made her pulse louder. 1, 2, 3. Then she stopped. Close, very close. The fire cast gold across his face. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair, pale eyes, beautiful and terrifying. His voice lowered. "Closer." She obeyed. Now only inches separated us. Her breathing turned shallow. The Duke lifted one hand, slowly, not rushed, never rushed. His fingers moved through the air until they found her wrist. Eleanor gasped. His touch was firm, warm, electric, not rough, not gentle, intentional. Every nerve in her body ignited. His thumb shifted, resting over her pulse. She froze completely. He felt everything, every wild beat, every betrayal of composure. His head tilted slightly, listening, not with ears alone, with touch, with presence. His voice became velvet. "You're trembling." Barely a whisper. Eleanor couldn't speak. His thumb pressed lightly. Her pulse went mad. The Duke inhaled slowly, then said something that made heat rush to her face. "You always tremble in the first 5 minutes." She stared. "What?" He continued. "Then your breathing steadies." A pause. "You relax." Another. "You forget to fear me." Her lips parted. How long had he noticed this? How carefully had he been observing? His next words hit even harder. But tonight, his thumb remained over her racing pulse. "You're more nervous than usual." Silence. Then, "Why?" The question shattered her defenses. Why? Because his touch felt dangerous, because his voice had changed, because she had started waiting for midnight, because the library had become the only place she felt seen, because the blind Duke had become the center of thoughts she could no longer control, because she was forgetting her place, because this had stopped being just reading. Eleanor whispered, "I don't know." The Duke go very still. Then, for the first time, his gloved hand came off. He removed it with slow precision, set it aside, revealing bare skin, long fingers, electric hands, scars near the wrist, evidence of old violence. Then he touched her again, bare skin to bare skin. Her entire body went rigid. The sensation was unbearable. His hand rose from her wrist, up, slowly, to her hand. He turned it gently. His fingers traced her knuckles, studied them, memorized them. Eleanor forgot how to breathe. His voice dropped into something dangerously intimate. "You tremble." A pause. "When you forget I'm dangerous." Silence. The words hung between them. Not accusation, not warning. Truth, raw truth. Eleanor's heart ached because she suddenly understood something terrifying. She did forget. Around midnight, around books, around his voice, she forgot the rumors, the rank, the danger. She forgot he was a duke, and that forgetting was becoming her greatest risk. Then the library doors opened. Eleanor jerked away. Lady Agatha stood at the entrance. Her sharp eyes moved between them, to Eleanor's flushed face, to the Duke, to their proximity. Silence fell like ice. Lady Agatha's expression hardened, cold, calculating. She had seen enough, far too much, and Eleanor knew instantly everything was about to change.
The air in the library turned glacial. Lady Agatha Ashcroft stood motionless in the doorway, one gloved hand resting on the brass handle, her expression carved from pure aristocratic disapproval. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Women like Lady Agatha weaponized silence. Her sharp eyes settled on Eleanor, not with anger, something worse, judgment, calculation, disgust. When she finally spoke, every word was polished steel. "Leave us." Eleanor's throat tightened. She curtsied immediately. "Yes, my lady." She didn't dare look at the Duke, didn't dare look at Lady Agatha again. She turned and moved toward the door, feeling every step like walking through fire. Just before passing, Lady Agatha spoke again, quietly, only for Eleanor. "Report to my chambers tomorrow morning." No emotion, no explanation. A summons. Eleanor bowed her head. "Yes, my lady." Then she left. But even halfway down the corridor she could hear voices rising inside the library. Not loud, not shouting, controlled, which somehow felt worse. Eleanor barely slept. By morning, dread sat heavy in her chest. She stood outside Lady Agatha's chambers at precisely 9. A maid opened the door. "Enter." Lady Agatha sat near the window with tea, elegant, immaculate, dangerous. She did not offer Eleanor a seat. Of course not. Her gaze moved slowly over Eleanor, assessing, dissecting. Then came the first strike. "How long?" Eleanor blinked. "My lady." Lady Agatha's expression did not change. "How long have these midnight visits been happening?" No point lying. 3 nights. 4.
Eleanor froze. 4. Then realized the first night counted 2. Lady Agatha noticed everything. The older woman lifted her teacup. So, a slow sip. The new maid enters my nephew's library in the dead of night. Her eyes sharpened, and within days the man who refused 17 noble brides begins changing his habits. Eleanor's pulse pounded. "My lady, it is not what—" Lady Agatha cut her off. "It is exactly what I believe it is. Ice. Absolute ice." Eleanor swallowed. "No." Her voice steadied. "With respect, my lady, it is not." Lady Agatha raised a brow. "Oh." She placed the cup down. "Then enlighten me." Eleanor inhaled. "He asked me to read." Silence. Then Lady Agatha laughed. A small laugh, disbelieving, almost cruel. "He asked?" "Yes." "Repeatedly?" "Yes." "At midnight?" "Yes." Lady Agatha stared, then leaned forward. "So you expect me to believe the Duke of Ashcroft," her voice sharpened, "summoned a maid night after night merely for literature?" Eleanor went still, because the brutal truth was she didn't fully believe it herself anymore. Lady Agatha saw hesitation and pounced. "There it is." She stood, walked slowly towards Eleanor, measured steps, predatory grace. "You're not foolish." Her voice lowered. "That is what concerns me." She stopped directly before Eleanor. "You are educated." A beat. "Quiet." Another. "Observant." Another. "You know exactly how to be underestimated." Eleanor felt cold. This sounded disturbingly familiar, like another man she knew. Lady Agatha continued, "My nephew has weaknesses." A beat. "Loneliness among them." Another. "Blindness among them." Then the blade. "And you are close enough to exploit both." Eleanor's eyes widened. "No." The word came instantly, raw, honest. Lady Agatha remained unmoved. "No." "No." Eleanor's voice shook now, not from fear, from hurt. "I would never manipulate him." Lady Agatha studied her, then delivered the sentence that shattered Eleanor. "That may be true." A beat. "But intention changes nothing." Eleanor stopped breathing. Lady Agatha's voice softened, not kindly, clinically. "Men do foolish things when starved for affection." A beat. "Even intelligent men." Another. "He is becoming attached." Silence. The words echoed. "Attached." Lady Agatha stepped back. Final verdict. "This ends tonight." Eleanor's chest tightened painfully. "My lady." "No more readings." A beat. "You will not enter that library again." Another. "If His Grace asks for you, you are unavailable." Eleanor stared, panic rising. "He will ask questions." Lady Agatha's expression hardened. "Then answer none." Silence. Then, "If you possess even a shred of decency," her gaze sharpened, "you will distance yourself before he forgets what you are." The last words hit hardest. What you are. Not who. What. A maid. Common-born. Disposable. Eleanor bowed her head, because what could she say? Nothing. Lady Agatha had already decided. Dismissed. That night was unbearable. At midnight, Eleanor sat alone in the servants' quarters, hands clenched, heart breaking. The clock struck 12. She imagined him waiting, listening, counting seconds. By 12:03, someone knocked. 3 precise knocks. Mr. Wilcox, the butler. Eleanor stood. He looked troubled. "His Grace is asking for you." Her chest tightened. "I cannot." Wilcox frowned. He has asked twice. I cannot. The older man studied her, then quietly said, He is not accustomed to being denied. Eleanor looked away. I know. At 12:15, another knock. Wilcox again, this time more tense. Miss Whale. Her throat tightened. Yes? The butler hesitated. Then, he knows. Cold spread through her body. What? He knows someone stopped you. Her breath caught. Of course he knew. He always knew. Wilcox's voice lowered. He asked one question. Eleanor barely whispered. What question? The butler looked at her carefully, then answered. Who made her cry? Her vision blurred. No, no. She pressed trembling fingers to her mouth. He knew that too, just from her absence? Wilcox exhaled. I suggest you speak to him. Eleanor shook her head. I can't. The butler said nothing, then stepped aside, and a voice emerged from the corridor behind him. Low, controlled, terrifyingly calm. Yes. Eleanor froze. Her blood turned to ice. The Duke stood there. No cane, no hesitation, just raw focus. His sightless eyes locked towards her breathing, towards her presence, towards her. Mr. Wilcox silently withdrew, leaving them alone. The corridor felt too small, too intimate, too dangerous. Sebastian stepped forward, once, twice, stopped. His voice dropped into lethal calm. Why didn't you come? Eleanor could not answer. He took another step. Answer me. Silence. Her throat burned. Still nothing. The Duke's jaw tightened. Then, for the first time, anger surfaced. Not explosive. Worse. Contained fury. Did I offend you? No. Then why? Silence. His breathing sharpened. Were you threatened? No answer. That told him enough. He went completely still, dangerously still. Then, aunt. One word. Pure understanding. Pure fury. Eleanor whispered, Please don't. His head turned sharply towards her. Don't what? Make this worse. The Duke laughed once, a dark, humorless sound. Worse? His voice dropped into lethal calm. Something made you cry. A pause. You avoided me. Another. You lied through silence. Then his final strike. And you expect me not to act. Eleanor's composure shattered. No! The word burst out. Her eyes filled. This is exactly why. Silence. The Duke froze. Eleanor's voice broke. Pain poured out. Because I forgot what...
Sebastian moved toward her. Not slowly, not cautiously, with absolute certainty. One step, two, then his hands found her shoulders, firm, steady, warm. Eleanor's breath caught. She had never felt him like this before, not controlled, not distant, not carefully restrained. This felt different, raw, immediate, alive. Say that again. His voice was low, rough, unrecognizable. Eleanor shook her head rapidly. No. His grip tightened, not painfully, but enough to stop her retreat. Eleanor. Her heart pounded. No, Your Grace, Sebastian. She froze. Silence. He had never asked that before, never crossed that line. His voice lowered further. Say my name. The words unraveled something inside her. She stared up at him, tears still clinging to her lashes. Sebastian? His eyes closed, a sharp inhale, as though hearing his name from her lips physically affected him. When he opened them again, though sightless, they felt unbearably intense. Good. His hands slowly moved from her shoulders down to her arms, anchoring her, keeping her there. His voice came quieter now, more dangerous because of the honesty inside it. You said you forgot something. A pause. That you were a maid. Another. That I was a duke. Another. That I was a duke. He leaned slightly closer. So let me tell you what I forgot. Eleanor stopped breathing. Sebastian's jaw tightened. I forgot what silence sounded like before you. Her lips parted. He continued, I forgot what midnight felt like before I began waiting for your footsteps. A beat. I forgot how empty this house truly was, until your voice made it feel alive. Tears welled again. No, this couldn't be happening. He couldn't be saying this. Not him, not the untouchable Duke. Sebastian's hand rose, bare fingers gently touching her cheek, catching a tear. His thumb lingered there, and then came the truth he had buried behind control. I refused 17 brides. His voice hardened slightly. Do you know why? Eleanor whispered, because you trusted none of them. A faint shift crossed his face. Partly. His thumb traced her cheek once. They came for the title. Another. The estate. Another. The power of being duchess. Then they spoke to a duke. His hand stilled. You spoke to a man. The word shattered her, completely. Sebastian leaned closer still, his forehead nearly touching hers now. I knew the first night. Her pulse raced. Knew what? That your silence was not emptiness. A pause. It was restraint. Another. You observed. Another. You listened. His voice dropped to velvet. You never pitied me. No, she never had. Never once. He gave a bitter laugh. Everyone else does. His hand slid into her hair, gentle, reverent, as though memorizing her. But you... His voice cracked for the first time, barely. You made me feel like blindness was the least interesting thing about me. Eleanor broke. A sob escaped. Sebastian immediately pulled her into him, one arm around her waist, the other cradling her head, protective, possessive, as though the world had no right to touch her grief. She clutched his coat, trembling. I can't do this, she cried softly. Yes, you can. No, her voice shook. Your aunt is right. He went completely still, dangerously still. Eleanor swallowed. She's right. A breath. You're a duke. Another. I'm a maid. Another. This ends badly. Sebastian pulled back just enough to face her. His expression had changed. Cold. Not towards her. Towards the idea. Towards anyone who dared define her worth. Then his voice became steel. No. One word. Absolute. Eleanor blinked. He continued. Do not repeat her mistake. What mistake? He straightened. The Duke returned. Not cold. Powerful. Commanding. Terrifying. She believes status determines value. A pause. She is wrong. His jaw tightened. Rank is inherited. Another. Character is earned. His hand found hers, interlocking fingers, a deliberate choice, a declaration. And you, Eleanor Vale. His voice softened again. "Possess more character than half the nobility I know." Footsteps sounded behind them. Lady Agatha. She had arrived, and this time she had heard enough. Her voice sliced through the corridor. "Sebastian." Cold, warning, sharp. He did not release Eleanor's hand, not even slightly. Lady Agatha stopped several feet away. Her expression hardened. "This is absurd." Sebastian spoke without turning. "No." Calm, lethal calm. "What is absurd," he slowly turned towards his aunt, "is assuming you could decide this for me." Lady Agatha's jaw tightened. "I protected you." "No." His voice sharpened. "You controlled what frightened you." Silence. She stared. "You would choose a maid?" The contempt in the word was unmistakable. Sebastian's expression darkened. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "I choose Eleanor." Silence. Lady Agatha froze. Eleanor stopped breathing. Sebastian continued, clear, precise, final. "I chose her the night I heard her voice." A beat. "I chose her when silence stopped suffocating me." Another. "I chose her when I realized I began measuring each day by how soon midnight would arrive." Eleanor's knees nearly weakened. No one had ever spoken of her like this. No one. Sebastian lifted her hand, held it like something sacred, then delivered the final blow. "If this house cannot accept her," his voice turned glacial, "then this house may learn what happens when it loses its duke." Lady Agatha went pale, because she understood he meant it, every word. He would walk away, from title, from inheritance, from everything, for her. The realization changed the room. Lady Agatha stared at Eleanor, really stared, not at a maid, at the woman her nephew had chosen over legacy. Seconds passed, long, painful. Then something shifted. Not warmth, not approval, recognition, reluctant, painful, real. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its edge, only slightly. "You truly love him." Not accusation, truth. Eleanor answered instantly. Yes. No hesitation, none. Lady Agatha closed her eyes briefly, then exhaled, a long breath, the breath of surrender. When she opened them again, the steel remained, but the war was over. She looked at Sebastian, then Eleanor, and said quietly, "You are both impossible." Sebastian almost smiled, almost. Lady Agatha shook her head. "I suppose impossible runs in the family." Eleanor stared. Was that acceptance? The older woman straightened. "Very well." A pause. "If you are to scandalize the county," her gaze sharpened at Sebastian, "at least do it properly." Then she turned and walked away, just like that, gone. Silence returned. Eleanor looked up at Sebastian in disbelief. Did that just happen? A slow smile touched his mouth, his first real smile, beautiful, devastating. Yes. Her heart nearly stopped. She had never seen him smile, and suddenly she understood why women would have crossed
kingdoms for him. He lifted his hand to her face again, tender now. No walls, no armor, just him, just Sebastian. "I have one question," she whispered. "What?" His thumb brushed her lower lip. "Will you still read to me at midnight?" Eleanor laughed through tears. Yes. His smile deepened. Good. Good? That familiar, dangerous warmth returned. Yes. He leaned closer, so close she could feel his breath. Because I have grown rather addicted to your voice. Her pulse raced. Addicted? Hopelessly. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. I may be blind, Eleanor. A pause. Emotion thickened every word. But you are the clearest thing I have ever known. And then he kissed her, slowly, deliberately, like a vow, like surrender, like coming home. And for the first time in years, Ashcroft Manor no longer felt empty, because at midnight in the great library, the blind Duke no longer listened to silence. He listened to love.